On episode 60, Dr. Robyn Magalit Rodriguez returns to the show to check in a year after leaving academia and starting a farm. We talk about retirement from academia, what it means to start and maintain a farm, a commitment to nurturing community, and of course the question, are you Filipino enough? If this is the first time meeting Dr. Rodriguez, you are in for a treat and some good old-fashioned healing of the heart, mind, and soul. Thanks for being here. Grab a beverage, pull up a chair, and enjoy listening to my conversation with Dr. Robyn Magalit Rodriguez. My name is Bruce Reyes-Chow, and this is BRC and Friends. Each episode, my co-host and I chat with activists, artists, academics, and adventurers to discuss politics, faith, pop culture, technology, and as you will discover, pretty much everything that pops into our heads. This is basically an excuse for us to hang out with friends and colleagues and riff about things that matter. Welcome to BRC and Friends. All right, I'm joined again this year. It's been a year since Dr. Robyn Magalit Rodriguez has been on the show, so I'm very excited to have her on today. And so we're just going to jump right in. For those of you that didn't listen to the episode last year, please do. It's excellent, as all of the episodes are excellent. But we are really excited to have you on, Dr. Robyn. So could you just, for the folks who don't know you, introduce yourself, kind of give your context, pronouns, where you are, and all those kinds of things?
Sure. Thank you. And thank you again for bringing me back. I'm so excited to be here. It's kind of hard to actually answer the question or actually introduce myself because I feel like I'm in such a position. But, I think most people know me as Dr. Robyn Rodriguez. I'm currently Professor Emeritus of Asian American Studies at UC Davis, which basically means I am a retired professor. So I did retire quite early. I'm not close to retirement age.
Right.
I think I'm not close to retirement age.
Do you get something special? Do you get something special with emeritus? Do you keep keys?
No, not from that institution.
No, that's true.
I pretty much it was like, bye.
Oh, yeah. Awesome.
So, but I'll use the Professor Emeritus because it sounds fancy. And
that's right.
I
Gets
earned
the access someplace.
I earned this title. So
darn right.
Most folks do know me in my role as a university professor. One of the major things that I'm very proud to have accomplished is I built the Bulusan Center for Filipino or Filipinx Studies from the ground up in 2018. And we're actually kind of closing it out and transitioning it out of the university with my exit, because a part of what prompted the retirement was, in fact, a lot of my frustration with the failure of investment in Filipinx studies by the university and academia more broadly. I am also very much a community organizer. I've been doing lots and lots of work in the Filipino community as an advocate. And one of the roles I'm playing right now is I'm a president for the Filipino American Educators Association of California. But I'm in transition.
Yes.
I created a new community-based organization in my late son's name, the Amado Kaya Initiative, which is running lots of great programming and will house what programs we had with the Bulusan Center. And I'm also actually a farmer.
Yes.
Brand new to farming. I grew up in the East Bay in Union City, California, when it was no longer farmland. It was pretty much just, an ethnic suburb with lots and lots of Filipinos. But I didn't grow up farming, but made a pretty radical decision to completely cultivate a new kind of relationship with the land. And so, everything else followed. So that's where I am now. Some people like to call me, what do they call me? Dr. Mama Ate.
all the honorifics. Well, I was like, I don't know where we are in age. Like I'll just use doctor. Cause it's always that weird. It's like, which honorifics do you use?
I don't know. Well, I turned 50. So what's that to you?
We're close. So you're young, you're younger than me.
Okay. Cool.
I've been more meetings now where I'm the oldest person, and there's times where I use honorifics, whatever, but I'll be in some meetings. I'm like, oh, I realize that you did not use my, because you're using it with other people. Because I think folks don't know where I am in the age structure. And I always tease people afterwards. I'm like, cool, yeah. Just want to let you know. They're like, okay, sorry.
I know. And at least it's clear, because now it's
That's
also
true.
like, Auntie?
Yeah, exactly. I got called it by somebody like they said, Bruce is like my punk older brother. I'm like, I'll take older brother rather than like great uncle. Like he's like, okay, I'll take that. And you also, I want to talk about academics and all that.
Yeah.
But you're also known as you use the phrase people's professor, right? So can you explain that a little bit? What does that mean to you as opposed to just being an academic with the PhD and all that? What does it mean to be a people's professor?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I think I've always been a people's professor, but it was sort of part-time, meaning that I never thought of myself as or my ambition was never to get a PhD and become a university professor just so I can write for other professors or teach just to the students in my classroom. I never imagined that was going to be my life, and it wasn't. So as much as I was doing all the work that is expected of me as a university professor, I was always doing work in the community, providing workshops, lectures, oftentimes uncompensated. I've had to change that a bit because, I put a lot of volunteer work into the community for, over 3 decades. I think it's okay to get compensated a little now. But anyhow, I did a lot of that work, Philam History Month to this day is stacked, and this has been my reality for most of my life because it matters to me. Even building the Bulusan Center, I never got paid for the most part for doing that work. It was a labor of love. And so I think, the pandemic and loss really had me take a pause to think about whether it made sense to be part-time people's professor and full-time university professor, and whether my heart is really about being a people's professor full-time. That's all I really care about. I only really care about, my community and people who are drawn to a form of knowledge that isn't, ordinarily available. I want to make that available. So yeah, that's been a really big part of who I am, for sure.
Yeah, that's great. I ask it so much of a kind of a selfish reason. I have 3 children, but 2 of them, one is working on their PhD application right now for the fall. The other one is a junior in college and also wants to do their PhD, and they're doing ethics studies, American studies, poli-sci. And, they never listen to anything that I do, of course, because they're my kids. But I'm like, listen to the episode with Robyn Rodriguez. You got to listen to it because you talked about academic world and all that. And they come out of, they're doing all the things. And I think they are struggling with their mentors saying, yeah, this is terrible to work in an institution. It's also amazing and wonderful, but it's also, and they want to kind of, they're both huge activists but are drawn to that deeper diving in of stuff. And so what do you tell like young people now or whoever's looking at PhD work? I think I want to go and pursue my PhD. And this is not where I was thinking the podcast would go, but
let's go.
So when people ask you, I asked Kevin Nadal the same question as an academic, as we would consider kind of a people's professor as well. What do you say to those young folks who come to you and say, I'm thinking about a PhD? Like, how do you help them navigate that?
Sure. Well, first off, have them reach out, especially if things about what I'd said kind of resonate. I think it starts first with what is the vision? What vision do you have for yourself? Are you going into this work because you have a deep desire to tell our community stories? Now, if that is the desire, the institution does not encourage people to go in with that sort of desire. Now, you either just recognize that is the dynamic and you cultivate all sorts of strategies so that you can continue to keep rooted in the thing, you asked kind of earlier before we hopped on, that you might ask me about, what gives you joy. It's a question that we all have to ask. And I think it's really something important for them to consider. If the thing that gives them joy and excitement is I get to tell my community stories, know that that the university is not an institution that is about fostering people with a passion for their people's stories,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What they want is people who are going to contribute to this, this body of expert knowledge. Now, you either go in recognizing there's this dynamic, but your joy is something else, and find ways to kind of inhabit the complexity of that experience, or maybe there are other pathways to pursue. Yep. Right. Now, there may be also be that your joy is to do that. You do want to do the work of being engaged with other scholars, because that just is a thing that drives you. And, it's not like it doesn't still excite me. I'm so bullish. I love to dive deep in big theory and like get lost in it. And I'm an air sign. I don't know. I guess that's why. But yes, I get it. I get it. But, for me, it was never fully satisfactory. I still wanted to live in the world and be able to kind of engage with the community, because at the end of the day, that's that mattered to me. It's always mattered that, are we collecting our community stories? Are we sharing them not to other academics, but to the people it matters, like my community? So it's a hard question, and it's not easy to navigate, because, and this is why I would encourage them, whatever they decide, if they decide to take the path, make sure to be part of a community. Stay rooted, with your home community, wherever you define that. Create a collective or a community in the space of academia, because you can and you will get sucked in. Believe me, I'm also a sociologist by training. When you are socialized over many years in a particular kind of way, that becomes your new normal. Yeah. And so I think part of what allowed me to keep this identity as people's professor, and not just as an identity, but to actually be it, is because I constantly maintained a real deep rootedness in various collectives and communities, so that my norm was never their norm ever. Right. It was always uncomfortable. I mean, something that, I've said before is that, I used to suffer from imposter syndrome until I realized, what? That's okay. Yeah. I'm just spying on y'all and taking what I need from my community. I will never want to be comfortable here. And, that's my own aspiration. But again, I'm totally supportive of folks who have different aspirations. Just be honest with yourself and understand what you're up against. So I don't discourage folks from pursuing that path, but I do ask people the hard question so they understand like what they're getting into, Yeah.
Well, it seems to be a common thing. I mean, it's like any advanced degree. It's like if it doesn't bring you some kind of joy at some level, you're not going to make it anyway, or you're going to die going through it. I mean, it just feels like a PhD or whatever you're doing.
Yeah. Don't just do it for the letters either.
Yeah. Well, you're not doing it for the money, clearly, because yeah, exactly. But what all their mentors, after they said it's terrible and wonderful, and yes, we encourage you to do it, all that, they're also like, follow the money. Like, if somebody's going to pay you to do the degree, and like you have somebody to study with, and all the things that would be like, don't go into huge debt to get your PhD. And we're like, yeah, we think that's a fine idea. So we'll see. We'll see where they end up. They're now at that level where they're doing stuff that, like, I understand the words separately, but when they start putting them all together, like, he'll help me out a little bit. But no, that's lovely. Thank you so much. Tell me. So I want to make sure. Tell me about the farm. So the last time, I think you were just starting to get over there. Like, you hadn't actually launched it, and then I remember by the summer you already had program. I was like, of course you did.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, no, I think you're right. So yeah, we have been officially living on our land, or tending to our land, for just about a year and a half. Okay. And mind you, I did grow up in Union City, California. Urban, and so, apart from, a little tiny garden in the backyard that my grandma sometimes maintained. Certainly my parents did not have the time to maintain. That was about it, and maybe houseplants. And so, I took a little bit of pride for being able to maintain houseplants and, have a few vegetables where I could get like at least one tomato, Right. So it had that, but it wasn't like at the center of my life in the way that it has become. But yeah, it's just been over a year and a half. And wow, I mean,
I can't
we've
imagine.
learned a lot. We've learned a lot. And we have just had the absolute most bountiful harvest. Like, I had no clue that I could do it. I mean, I had very low expectations. It was just
Right.
kind of like, okay, land, ancestors,
Right.
spirit, creator. I'm just going to just leave it to you to teach me. I'm going to watch and learn and do what I can and, you know, just approach this with that kind of framework. So set the bar low. And because of that, it's like I've got all these like plants growing into each other because I didn't know like a tomato plant could grow that big because, my tomato plant, if like I got one, I was happy. I've learned harvesting. Oops, I think that was a sound. Sorry.
You're good. You're good. Keep it.
So then, so I've been literally harvesting wheelbarrows full
Wow.
of tomatoes, and I've got these big old, huge, in Filipino, ubo, I guess
Mhm.
they're called bottle gourd. I've got eggplants just popping up left and right, and okra and melons, and I mean, it's incredible. I've just been so humbled, and I just feel so blessed that I've been so supported in this journey. I think on a deep level, spiritually, and also from the community. So many people have come, and I think that's also really given me a lot of encouragement because it's not easy. It's really not easy. This is an absolutely new shift for us, and we live in a relatively, yeah, I mean, not relatively, like really, we live in like this rural small town, and it can feel a little bit daunting, and then we'll get just these visitors who are just so inspired by what we're doing, who um, are shifting, beginning to shift how they're thinking about their own relationship to the land. And it's been beautiful, and I love it. We just
Mm.
hosted a little group of college students from UC Berkeley who are connected with an Asian American student uh, program there. And it was amazing. I just felt like, now this is my classroom.
Right.
This feels exactly right. This is where I want to talk about Asian American history, Filipino American history. This is where it happens, to kind of be out here. And it was beautiful. I spent half a day with these young people, but you could tell that half day experience together is will have an impact that I'm not sure 10 weeks of a quarter in, while teaching at UC Davis will make.
Yeah.
And what
Yeah.
a difference. And so it's been amazing. So, I'm learning how to can. I'm learning how to jam. I'm like, I'm not,
Yeah.
I did grow up to parents who, are like baby boomers and grew up with all of the scarcity kind of
Right.
framework around the war. So I'm not wasting, I'm
Right.
learning all.
That's
I
awesome.
mean, so I'm looking stuff up because I'm like, this is not going to waste. We're going to save the seeds. And then if we can't do
We're going to
that,
plant it, pickle it, jam it, do something.
yeah. So I learned all of that literally in the last like 3 to 4 weeks.
So what's your I mean, it is an amazing story. I think I'm just gonna book you every year because I think we're just gonna, and then you can look back in 10 years and be like, for 10 years here, at one point you're gonna be like, I know how to do this now. Like you're at one point it'll be like, I've mastered this particular thing. But I mean, I think there are a lot of people, fortunately, that are really trying to recapture some land connection. It's certainly in some communities, but none of us are probably like, we're going to go and do it. I mean, this is a huge move that you did. And I love, so I've taken a little shift from in my professional career, and folks are like, are you retired now? And I'm like, no. All my energy is going down to stuff that I really love doing. Yeah. And it sounds like, you've retired technically, but now you're like, when I saw stuff pop up about hosting things during the summer and all these other things coming up, I was like, yeah, this is where like there's like life and thriving going on. So it sounds like that's what's going on. But I want to ask, what's your biggest, if you could think of, or any, like you did something and you're like, oh, I didn't know what I was doing, and now I'm like plants growing into each other because, oh, well, you just plant them 5 inches apart, right? Because that's how big zucchinis are. Well,
yes, that was the biggest thing, because really I had no idea. You read those seed packets and you kind of like, you're like, nah, I don't
yeah, you don't believe it.
talking about. And so it's so much. Like I'm tripping over, oop one, like, dang, I don't want to waste it. It looks so great. That's like how many pots of tinola right there. Do you know what I mean? So that was definitely learning. I mean, even we didn't build trellises because again, I'm like, why am I going to build a trellis to hold like a tomato plant? Like,
oh, interesting. And so they just grow flat then, right? Or they just start?
Yeah, so they're kind of just like a big old bush. And okra, like I didn't know okra grew like that. You know what I mean? I got excited.
I I like okra, but how does it? Is it a vine? Is it a bush?
No,
what is it?
Like a plant, and it kind of
okay.
Up and it come. You see these pretty yellow and purple flowers, and you're like, oh wait, that's okra. Oh, like it's amazing. So that was a big thing that we learned. I mean, one of the big things that we continue to be challenged by, and my husband is amazing, like, wow, engineer, YouTube engineer, YouTube. But basically he had to figure out how to redirect water. We are on a well system, but to redirect water to get it to our fields. So there was a lot of trial error, like trenching pipes and all that. And, we're really trying to be water wise and really conserve water. So, we had to install like a drip system, which basically really targets the plant directly. And so, there's all these things we had to learn. It was not easy. I think one of the things that we learned early on, which I'm glad we did, which was that to stop thinking that we had to get the property ready before we could engage the community. I think at some point it was like, what? The whole vision here was to engage and invite our community. Let's just go. This is more than enough. Let's open up the space. Let folks come and watch a process as it shifts and changes and evolves and invite even help, and that's also shifted a lot because there is so much love and support out there. I think we are tapping into a deep longing in our communities, a longing that I think we may not have realized was there. I think that the pandemic was among the things that might have like really brought that longing into more awareness for us. I think, certainly climate change is inviting us to really, really wonder about what is our relationship to this earth. And we wonder about it. We sometimes feel debilitated by what we can do about it. And I think that something about our little experiment gives people a sense of hope that we can shift things. And a family that had no idea and really was operating really through deep faith, frankly, faith in our ancestors and the creator, faith in the ancestors of the land who, ancestors who attended it for years, faith in our community, and definitely faith in ourselves as a unit. And so I think that's part of the story too. And wow, like it's just, I'm still floored by it all. Like I think like yesterday I was making jam, I was like, wow,
I'm making jam.
Whoa. And like tomato jam, what came up with that? I mean, I'd have to credit my dear friend and collaborator. So we're working on a collaboration with, Magpie Alchemy, owned by Jamie Cardenas, which is based in Sacramento, but she just does all this wonderful work in creating medicine for our community in the form of, skin products and kind of these hydrosol sprays, but just really kind of tapping into these ancestral knowledges around, that can help support our healing. And so she was the one who was like, you could jam tomatoes. I was like, what? And so we started a batch, and together we concocted this recipe that built on, I guess, somebody she was paying attention to, a Filipina, a biracial Black Filipina chef, I guess, in San Diego makes tomato jam with like, vanilla bean. And so Jamie and I were in the kitchen. I was like, what if we add cardamom? And she's like, oh, yes. So we did. And so I've been experimenting with jam. And let me tell you, putting that jam on a grilled cheese sandwich, wow. It's like, wow.
I mean, we can talk about food now. I mean, welcome to the new podcast on food.
I'm going to tell you about all the funky, weird things I made. Like I made some dope pickled radish and cucumber. Like what? I don't know.
I love like just the process of cooking. I have a friend who just came out with this amazing book called Just Kitchen and talks about the entire kind of spiritual grounding of the kitchen space and harvesting and cooking and prepping and all the kind of things.
Are they in a podcast? I'll have to listen.
They will be, yes. By the time this one comes out, we'll have already been out. So yes,
okay.
It's called Just Kitchen.
Okay.
And it's lovely. I just read. I wish I had a copy right here somewhere. But but I think there's like this reconnection. Like whenever I make adobo, it's my grandfather's recipe, and like there's this connection. I have this dim sum recipe from my Chinese side, my grandma, and like when I prep it, I have to make it the way that she made it, and I dice the things the same way, and that, and I pass on like my kids as they're starting to call me and be like, so how did you do this? I'm like, well, here's how I did it, but like play with it. I mean, that whole food grounding process is just so beautiful. Oh, I have a question for you. Filipino American History Month.
Yes.
Adobo, peppercorn or no peppercorn?
Oh, peppercorn.
Thank you.
Who doesn't do peppercorn?
Apparently, there are some Filipinos who like that is not, peppercorn is not. And I'm like, well, one, there's no right way to make
That's
adobo.
Right. Agreed. Like that's no authentic Filipino. There are lots.
Exactly.
Of us. Okay.
Our adobo should look like us in general.
Yes.
But there was like a serious no peppercorn like throwdown, and I was like, I disagree. I disagree.
I'm on the peppercorn side.
I think I've watched some reels and things of like white chefs or non-connected people like making adobo, and I'm like, oh, that doesn't go. What are you doing? Why are you putting that?
No.
But peppercorn, I'm okay. I had to clear that up. Thank you.
Thank you.
One more vote for peppercorn. So I am keeping track.
Like the bougie, fancy, multicolored peppercorn.
Well, there we go. Whoa, now. Calm down over there, farmer.
Calm down. Yeah. No,
you're gonna start putting like everything in the farm. That's what your new adobo is gonna be like, because whatever we got left, which would kind of be appropriate, right? Whatever is left is going in.
Yeah, that's right.
So I want to shift a little bit. It is Filipino American History Month, and I've talked before this about the being history and not heritage and all those, and we've had some amazing people on, but. One of the things that I know my kids struggle with, I've struggled with, and a lot of Filipino Americans struggle with, is the question about if you're Filipino enough. Right? You walk into a room, and sometimes, our community, we can begin to build these kind of structures of who is in or out and all those kind of things. Do you speak? What do you eat? Do you all these markers and litmus tests? And so I've as I talk with Filipino young people, there's a lot of folks have this imposter syndrome when they go to Filipino things, like I'm not enough to be here. So what, has that been a question people have asked you, or how do you respond to a young person who's coming into some awareness and, are wondering, am I Filipino enough? How do you respond to something like that?
Sure. That's definitely, that's really hard. I think when that question gets posed to those of us who were born and raised outside of the Philippines, it's like an accusation. It hurts, right? Even when you're feeling like people are making you feel outside of this thing that is so much a part of who you are, when you already feel oftentimes like an outsider. So one of the things I say is, well, first of all, the very term Filipino was always an invented term
Mm.
I mean, let's remember that the Philippines is an archipelago. And really, our peoples were incredibly diverse. There are multiple languages in the Philippines where literally people in the North cannot speak to folks in the South. Um, and that's partly the beauty of it all, is that what brought us together, what united us under this umbrella of Filipino, was a common desire for freedom, for liberation from Western colonization. And that's the thing that brought us together. So, that nobody, I think that there can't be like the Filipino police. There are so many diversities of, types of Filipino, that I think what matters most is where are our affinities and affections? Does the Philippines and that lineage and its history, including the history of diaspora, animate how we think about ourselves? And if that's what we have, if we can hold on to that, then we can claim Filipino, whatever language we may speak, because maybe somebody doesn't speak Tagalog, but you could talk to somebody who was born and raised in the Philippines, but they're still not speaking Tagalog, So that's what I typically say. I think it's like, how are you feeling? What are your connections? What are your affinities? And that's what matters most. And I think we can't be policing people, and especially in the diaspora. Like I feel like, it's already hard enough to feel like we're on the margins. We don't need to be marginalizing each other even more.
Right.
And our experiences are shifting too, in terms of like what it feels to be Filipino American as a distinctive experience of being Filipino, you know, and that's equally valid.
Yeah. Well, and equally as diverse, right? I mean, just that like, what does that even?
Oh yeah,
mean?
We talk about it. It's like, East Filipinos.
I was just talking with somebody. I was just interviewing somebody, and they said something. I'm like, and I was like, oh, that's right. We like different Filipinos. Like we're still both. But I was like, okay, oh yeah.
And there's like the Bay Filipinos, different from the Sakuans, because
then there's like Stockton Filipinos. Like we're. I always feel like Stockton Filipinos are super smug. Sometimes we're like, oh well, we're Stockton Filipinos, so
Yeah. I know. Dawn and I used to joke about that, because she was a Stockton Filipino, and I was a Union City Filipino, and we could see things a little bit different.
What's your area code? 209. 209.
Okay. Well,
I still have my Google phone number is still 209. Like it's like. I've had this 209 number forever, and I refuse to give it up. I haven't lived in Stockton in 30 years, but
it doesn't matter. It's the same with me. I will claim Union City.
Do you get to go back? Do you have family or friends there anymore? Do you visit there?
My parents are both buried not too far from where I grew up, and I still have family there. And it's just I love to go there just because. And I'm going there today, actually. Because it's the Filipino American Educators Association of California's conference. So I'm going to go home. It's going to be in Union City. And I love it. It's.
Well, there's nothing like home, right? I mean, you go. I mean, we know there are problems everywhere and there's whatever, but you get home and, I go to Stockton now with my kids and they know like intellectually there's this deep rootedness they have to Stockton because of their grandparents and all, but they're also like, well, yeah, but it's like, there's nothing here. And I'm like, don't say that.
Yeah. And actually, you know what? Thanks to, Don Mabalan and Dylan Delvo and Little Manila Rising, stuff is changing. Stockton.
Yeah. I would move back. I don't know in a heartbeat, but I would move back if the opportunity. But I'm not sure my wife is. We're in San Jose now, which is a little like Stockton. It feels like, but in any case, this is now not an afternoon geography podcast.
I know, but it's actually super interesting anyway. Like you could do an episode just about, how we attribute meaning to places like that. Like there's
Oh,
the
yeah.
Daly City Filipino, and there's the city San Francisco Filipinos, and the
Oh,
San
wow.
Antonioans. We know, I mean,
Yeah.
it's like we all
That's
at meetings.
that is really funny. Like to have like find somebody from each one to get on and be like, okay, let's just talk about what are the. Oh yeah, that could be a whole other. There, no, there's your idea because I'm sure you need more to do is to go ahead and start your podcast up. Because I know that was one of the things you wanted to try to do at some point.
It's just like, oh, that's the other thing. Speaking of farming, what did I learn? You gotta be there, And so I just didn't have much time for anything else,
Yeah.
like every
Well,
single
things will die, right? Things will die if you don't.
will die. And you're having to kind of weigh between precipitation, if there's any, like the sun, the heat, temperature, and just there's so many things to kind of think of, and just the labor, because we're doing this no-till method, which is really kind of the most, kind of gentle approach to the land. It means you have to plant things. So we're literally not hacking into the soil. That's a whole other conversation. But basically, kind of, we draw from techniques that are meant to be regenerative to the soil and not extractive from it. And so it's just work. It's a lot of work because we're not using chemicals, trying to like use minimal, machinery is like a lot of just physical labor. So, I needed to do that. I needed to be super present with that. But yeah, I do want a podcast for sure because, social media, I don't know, it doesn't feel right. I like the longer form of podcasting. This is fun. Look, it's been 30 minutes. We had so much fun.
And social media right now is just changing so much. I mean, it's one of those. There's some parts that I love and I connect with my fam. I mean, that's the only way I know what my younger nieces and nephews are doing. I mean,
That's true.
But there's also this part about it is like, it's also part of this industrial complex of getting stuff out so that, that whole gigging world and like, you got to get paid. Like today I'm like, if I don't send the invoices, I'm probably not going to get paid because they're not going to be like, oh, we'll just go ahead and make sure we compensate. Yeah. Anyway, that's a whole other podcast, but let's shift.
Yes.
So what's bringing you joy? What's moved you lately? What you like, whether you're reading, watching, listening to anything, what are the things kind of that have moved you lately?
Yeah. One of the things that, I feel like I've been doing a lot of reading just because that's the kind of person I am. I'm constantly moving and shifting. Let me tell you, the thing that really inspired me lately was reading Jen Soriano's Nervous, which is sort of a memoir and meditation on mental health and healing in the Filipino community. Beautiful, sometimes hard, but definitely, I think, very inspiring text for me. What's recently given me joy actually is I've rediscovered my love for writing. I think that over the last few years, I'd started to develop a relationship or just a kind of writing wasn't giving me joy. I felt like because I had to write in a way that conformed to certain demands of academia, which I could do. Mm-hmm. And I there was a certain joy that I could feel in that mode of writing as well. But it stopped giving me joy. And so writing as a practice altogether was really just, I was kind of averse to it. But I've started writing again, and I feel like I'm starting to find my own voice again and lean into that in a way that I wasn't, like to be an expert was to not have your own voice. You kind of have to rest on all this data and kind of previous bodies of, knowledge. But that's definitely given me joy. So, I mean, apart from reading Jen Soriano's Nervous, I've been reading like a hodgepodge of things. So, I really feel like I haven't been responsible as somebody who has always said that they were in solidarity with Native peoples, but I don't know that my practice was actually aligned in that way. So part of what I've been doing is a lot of self-study on Native American histories, from the most local ones to where I live, and more broadly in California. And so that's been really important to me. I continue to be on a healing journey. October 24th is going to be my mom's 1 year death anniversary. And, I've lost both my parents now. And that's really, in addition to my older son. So, I'm in a process still of healing from that. I think it's deep when your parents go, when that one connection, really that intimate connection to the Philippines now is severed. I think I'm dealing with that kind of grief too. So I do read a lot of different kinds of wellness texts from, different perspectives and, spiritual and kind of, healing kinds of, texts. So yeah, so my nightstand is full of a whole bunch of books that I cycle through, but that's okay.
Yeah.
What am I watching? Okay, I don't know. I really, really loved Ted Lasso. It was kind of funny. Like, moving on, I know. To Shrinking, I don't know. Not that
it's so funny.
Wow, they're
Our family are huge soccer people. Like we just spent the World Cup, the Women's World Cup in Australia, New Zealand, and got to watch the Philippines team win their first World Cup game ever. It was amazing. But we've never seen Ted Lasso because
oh my God.
So the reason is there's no grand like ethical dilemma for us. It's the fact that it's the fact that we're like, my wife and I have both like, we have reached the point where we are not going to pay for one more streaming service.
I know.
It's like we already pay for too many, and it's not as if we can't. We just like it feels like one more. I was wrong. We're not going to. And there's no principle. It's just like we have been sucked in. So, but everybody's like, you haven't watched Ted Lasso because we're such soccer people. And I'm like, I know, but I'm not going to do it.
I know. It's so cute though. Like
I've heard it's good.
Yeah.
We,
so that was fun and light because I kind of needed fun.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I think that part of it is, I was just talking to somebody and we veered off into Star Trek and Star Wars, like this peace activist, all that stuff, and we veered off into this kind of space. And I don't know if the episode's going to be out or not.
This for me.
Say that again.
The new spin-off of Star Wars. Yeah.
Ahsoka is good. Yeah. But I think there's something about that complexity and fullness of our humanity for those who are in the work, because I think people, and even to ourselves, like, well, if we're having fun, we're not like, there's this martyrdom, you sacrifice everything. I'm like, well, no, even our grandparents, you sacrifice so much, like we're still partying. Like there was like this holding balance and harmony.
Well, gosh, we could have a whole conversation on that. Yeah, I hear you though. Like it's as if, to be like an activist, a social justice organizer, I think there may be a way, those of us who identify in those ways, and, even if we don't, the assumption is the people who identify that way are just sort of a joyless people.
Yeah.
Because, what is there to be joyful about? Right. And there's an argument to be made about that. We're facing all sorts of crises.
Sure.
And turn on the news, put on a social media feed. It is going to kind of be filled with lots of horrible, violence, state violence perpetrated by individuals. It's climate crisis.
Yep.
I get that. And it's true. Those are very real. That is our reality. And I think, and that's kind of why I think I've shifted in the way I have. What is going to sustain us in doing the work to transform that? We need to have a space where we are experiencing joy, even resting. One of the big books that I read was Tricia Hersey's Rest is Resistance. And this notion that, when do we, start to imagine where do the visions for something different and better come? When we're daydreaming, which often comes when our mind is turned off and at rest, or when we're sleeping, when we dream of our ancestors, where they visit us, where we can, different visions of different ways of different possibilities kind of come to us. So yeah, I think I've really shifted from, because I probably was one of those, like, well, I'm not going to watch that, like there's shit to be watched. Like, I got to watch that. I don't know. I got to read this. I got to watch. I mean,
Yeah.
and I don't know anymore. Like, I do that. Honestly, I barely watch the news now because I'm just like, why? Because I already know.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
I already know it's going to be a different name, a different face, a different place. But we know what structures organize a society. We know what work needs to be done. So let's start building. And I think that's where I'm at now. I want to build. I want to dream. I want to see, even if it's in this tiny little place, a reimagination farm, where we're trying to like enact and manifest and make real, like something different. I want to, can I just share that? And if there's a ripple effect, because I believe in it, I think there will be a ripple effect. There is a ripple effect. And maybe transformation will happen in different kinds of ways. And yeah.
Thank you. That's, I mean, I think, yeah, no, I think that's exactly, when I run into young folks who are just like all about, and I get it, and I've been there, and I'm like, well, tell me where is the joy? I ask them, well, like, where, because if you're not finding those spaces, like, what are you working towards? Like, what are you trying to help create together if you can name those places where it? And the science fiction conversation we just had with somebody, we were like, why do we like science fiction?
Yes.
Star Trek in particular, right? It creates these worlds like, oh, that's like, still has all the crappiness, but here's a vision of what could be. And
that's right.
In the midst of everything else. Anyway, all right. So we got to end up, and they'd be like, oh, they talk for like 4 hours. I'm not going to listen to a 4-hour podcast.
I know.
But what's the best way for people to connect with you, find out what you're doing, stay updated, all that kind of stuff? How can people get
Sure. Well, okay, you could try, and I will do my best.
But you're going to be out farming, just to be clear. You're going to be out. I love you. Some of you go look at your Instagram. There's something like a number of posts and 6 posts in 9 months. And I'm like, well, because she's out farming. Like, it's that
was real. And I was tending to me too, so I had to do that. Thank you for that. But yeah, I mean, so I am on Instagram. It's at Mad Professora for me, myself. And I'm trying to figure out what that account does. But I have all these other kinds of things I'm also doing. So the big part of our life, of course, is Reimagination Farm. So on Instagram, it's Reimagination Farm. But those are probably the two main, and they can kind of point folks to other places, including the Amano Kaya Initiative, also primarily on Instagram. Haven't delved into TikTok yet. Definitely try to keep our websites relatively updated, but and again, and also trying to figure out kind of YouTubing and podcasting. But yeah, this has been the season of having to be present with the land. But now that we're coming to, fall is harvest season. So it's getting colder, winter's coming. So I think that, and now that I kind of have a sense of what the rhythm feels like, I feel like I'm going to be able to put more energy into all that other stuff.
Right.
And then, then once, the tail end of winter comes, even in winter, we're going to start.
Are you going to be, does it snow where you are?
It can. Yeah. On occasion, which is cool.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not like, you don't have to, like, you're not going to definitely have snow every year. Cause that would cancel me out. I am not a snow person at all.
No. I mean, it snowed a lot this recent winter, but it was kind of unprecedented. So at most, we might get like a light dusting a couple of days. I think, again, this last winter was a little unprecedented. So, but then again, who knows, right? I mean, everything's shifting everywhere. So I think that's where the relationship with the land comes in, where you just kind of have to pay attention, because I don't know that, meteorologists or anyone can fully predict what's going to unfold day to day until really, really dramatic shifts happen in terms of, what we're doing, with respect to the earth.
Great. Thank you. Well, we've covered many, many things. I love it. I love it.
I love it.
I'm
It's
gonna
so
be like,
talk to
I
you.
think I'm gonna see like I think we may have covered 10 topics or something. This is awesome.
Hopefully,
That's
that's
awesome.
gonna be awesome.
Well, thank you for being on again, and I will see you next year.
Yes,
Okay. Yes.
please. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Those of you that are listening, thank you so much for listening to BRC and Friends again. Go to all the places where you podcast or you get your podcasts, rate, review, subscribe, all the things you're supposed to do. Please go ahead and do that. And again, thank you for being here. We'll see you next week on BRC and Friends. BRC and Friends was hosted and produced by Bruce Reyes-Chow. Co-hosts were Jorge Bautista, Mickey Scott Bay-Jones, Amy Kim Kremis Parks, and Laura Monaco Heifetz, and the theme music was composed and recorded by Marissa Magdal Laurent. Feel free to connect with any of us via the show notes. And lastly, please don't make me beg. Take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to BRC and Friends wherever you listen to podcasts. Until the next episode, thanks for listening to BRC and Friends.